He is almost 40 years old. He still trains harder than players half his age. He still screams at himself after missing a single chance in a match his team is already winning. This is a psychological analysis only, not a judgment of his career. Today we ask a simple question: why can Cristiano Ronaldo never stop? Before the trophies, before the statues, before the name became a brand, there was a small house on the island of Madeira. Cristiano was the youngest of 4 children. His mother worked as a cook, his father worked as a gardener and a kit man for the local club. Money was tight enough that his mother later admitted she considered ending the pregnancy. His father struggled with alcoholism for most of Cristiano's childhood. Psychologists who study children raised in unstable households describe a common adaptation. The child looks for one thing they can fully control when nothing else around them feels stable. For Cristiano, that thing was a ball, not because he loved football more than other children did, but because on that field, for the only time in his day, the outcome depended on him alone. At 11 years old, Cristiano left his family and moved to the mainland, to the Sporting Lisbon Academy, alone. No parents, no siblings, a child in a dormitory hundreds of kilometers from home. He has spoken about crying almost every night that first year, calling home and begging to be allowed to come back. Attachment psychologists have a term for what happens to a child separated early from a stable base: compensatory self-reliance. When a child cannot depend on consistent emotional support, the nervous system adapts by depending entirely on itself. Achievement becomes the substitute for connection, because achievement, unlike people, cannot leave you behind. At 15, doctors found an irregular heartbeat that could have ended his career before it began. He had heart surgery, recovered, and trained again within weeks. The body could be fixed. The lesson had already been learned. Ask anyone who has trained with him, and you'll hear the same stories. 5 90-minute naps a day instead of 1 long sleep. A system designed by a sleep coach to maximize recovery. Ice baths, hyperbaric chambers, a body fat percentage tracked like a stock price. His longtime physiotherapist said Ronaldo's body in his 30s tested like an athlete, a decade younger. This is usually told as a story about willpower, but psychologists who study extreme discipline see something else. Discipline this total isn't just commitment, it's control, applied to the one domain where control is actually possible. You cannot control whether the world loves you. You cannot control a father's addiction, a childhood spent far from home, or a heart that almost failed you at 15. But you can control exactly how many minutes you sleep, exactly what you eat, exactly how hard you train on a Tuesday nobody is watching. For a mind built this way, discipline isn't a tool for greatness. It's the closest thing to safety he has ever found. He says it often, sometimes after a goal, sometimes in interviews with a calm that surprises people. I am the best in the world. Critics call it arrogance. Psychologists who study high-achieving athletes describe something more specific: verbal self-anchoring. Saying a belief out loud, repeatedly, doesn't just express confidence, it manufactures it. The brain takes spoken statements as evidence almost as strong as outcomes. But here's the detail that complicates the simple story. People closest to him describe someone who reads nearly every comment about himself, who has been visibly furious at unflattering statues, at criticism from teammates, at being substituted in a match. A man who is genuinely certain he is the best does not need to be told so. The need for the world to keep confirming it is the clue. Underneath the confidence sits a question that has never fully closed. In 2017, after winning his 5th Ballon d'Or, Ronaldo was asked what motivates him now. He didn't talk about money. He didn't talk about legacy. He talked about proving people wrong. 5 Ballon d'Ors, hundreds of millions of dollars, statues in 3 countries, and the engine was still other people's doubt. This is the pattern psychologists see most clearly in children who grew up without a stable source of unconditional approval. The achievement never closes the account, because the account was never really about football. It was opened years earlier, on an island, in a house where love and stability sometimes felt conditional, on behavior, on circumstance, on a father's relationship with alcohol. No trophy was ever going to fully pay that down, which is why, at almost 40, with nothing left to prove to anyone watching objectively, he is still the first one at training. There are two engines that can power extraordinary achievement. One runs on love of the craft itself, the joy of the work, independent of who's watching. The other runs on absence, on filling a space that was carved out early and never fully closed. Both engines can produce extraordinary results, but only one of them knows how to stop. Ronaldo's career is, in many ways, a 40-year answer to an 11-year-old boy crying alone in a dormitory, wondering if he was good enough to stay. The tragedy and the triumph are the same story. The wound built the will. The will built one of the greatest careers in the history of sport. And the wound, as far as anyone can tell, still has never fully closed. Maybe greatness was never the goal. Maybe greatness was just the byproduct of a boy trying to prove he was worth keeping. If this video changed how you see drive, ambition, or your own relentlessness, share it with someone who needs it. Subscribe to DJOE Psychology Deep Think. New video every week. See you in the next one.